Right now, US companies are quietly rewriting how they build teams, and almost all of it points south. In 2023, American companies grew remote hiring in Latin America by roughly 160%, and it only accelerated into 2026. Today, more than 80% of US companies are exploring nearshore hiring, but here's what nobody tells you. Hiring in Latin America is not like hiring in Ohio. Every major country down there has employee protective labor laws and misclassification rules that can turn a cheap hire into a six-figure penalty. Do it right, and you can get world-class talent in your time zone for half the cost. Do it wrong, and you get a legal cleanup bill. So this is the complete guide: why, where, what it costs, how to do it, and how not to get burned. Welcome back to the latest in business, where we break down where work, money, and technology are actually heading before everyone else catches on. I'm your host, let's get into it. So, why Latin America and why now? Three forces, and they compound. First is time zone. Talent in Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, and Argentina works your hours, in real time. Colombia and Peru is right on US Eastern. No more waiting around 12 hours for a reply. Second, cost. A mid to senior engineer who runs $125,000 in the US averages closer to $40,000 across the region, roughly 60 to 68% in savings and up to 80% for support and admin roles. Third, the talent itself. This isn't junior outsourcing anymore. In 2025, about 84% of Latin American placements were mid-level or senior, and software engineering placements grew to 250% year over year. The senior talent is deep, and most of the market is only just waking up to it. Latin America isn't one place. Mexico is the default starting point. The deepest talent pool, the most mature nearshore ecosystem, and near total overlap with US hours, with strong tech support talent coming out of Mexico City and Guadalajara. Colombia is the timing king. Bogota and Medellin sit on US Eastern Time. English is climbing, and cost is among the most attractive in the region. Argentina is the quality play. The highest English proficiency in Latin America, and strong senior engineering and data talent, though most Argentine contractors now insist on being paid in US dollars or stablecoins. And Brazil is the giant, the largest market and a real software and data hub, but also the most complex and expensive labor system. Honorable mentions: Uruguay for stability, Costa Rica for bilingual support, Chile and Peru for solid mid-level engineering. Just match your country for the role and the overlap you need. Here's the mistake almost everyone makes. They think the salary is the cost. It isn't. Every major country mandates benefits on top of salary, and they add up fast. In Mexico, contributions add roughly 25%. In Colombia, closer to 30%. And in Brazil, mandatory employer costs can add 40 to 70% on top of the gross. Then there's the 13th month salary, the aguinaldo, which is not optional. In Mexico, it's a legal minimum of 15 days pay. In Colombia and Brazil, it's a full extra month, paid in 2 installments. So in most of the region, plan on paying 13 months of salary for 12 months of work, and add 30 to 70% on top of the headline number depending on your country. Skip that math and your budget is going to be wrong by day one. Okay, so you've picked a country and a role, and now how do you actually employ someone? Well, there's 4 paths, and they're not equal. Option 1, independent contractor. Fast and cheap, send a contract, pay an invoice, fine for short, genuinely independent projects. But if a contractor works full-time, on your schedule, with your tools, for only you, local law almost certainly calls them an employee, and the misclassification penalties are brutal. Option 2, set up your own legal entity. This has the maximum control, but it's slow and expensive. Roughly $10,000 to $20,000 to set up, 4 to 8 weeks, and $24,000 to $48,000 a year to maintain. The math only really works once you're hiring 6 to 10 plus people in one country. Option 3, an employer of record, or EOR. A third party becomes the legal employer on paper, handling payroll, taxes, and compliance for about $200 to $700 a month per employee. It kills your misclassification risk, but it does not find the person for you. You still source, screen, interview, and manage the talent entirely on your own. It's compliance plumbing, not like a hiring solution. Which brings us to option 4, and for most companies, it's the top choice. Every other option leaves a gap. Contractors leave you exposed, your own entity is slow and expensive, and an EOR handles paperwork but leaves you to do all the actual hiring. A managed staffing partner closes every gap all at once, because it does the two hardest things together. It finds the talent and it handles the employment. A really clear example is hire overseas. You start with a discovery call to define the role, and then their team sources the candidates from like a pre-vetted pool or a custom headhunt. And then they hand you a short list to interview, all already through skill evaluations and background checks. So you pick the person, they handle the contracts, compliance, payroll, and equipment for one flat monthly fee, typically 70 to 90% below a comparable US hire. No entity to open, no misclassification exposure. And they move fast. Hire overseas, for example, can staff your role in as little as a week. For a founder who wants a great full-time team member without becoming an expert in Colombian severance law, that's the move. To be fair, if you already have your person, an EOR is a fine tool. And at real scale in one country, your own entity eventually wins on cost. But for most teams building an ongoing team, the managed partner is the fastest, safest, and lowest hassle path in. Whichever path you choose though, know these. First off, misclassification. Latin American courts judge the relationship by how it actually works, not what your contract says. And many countries assume employee status unless you prove otherwise. Get it wrong, and you're liable for back contributions, retroactive benefits, severance, and fines that in some countries top $100,000 per worker. Second, intellectual property. The US work made for hire doctrine doesn't automatically apply. Contractors can retain inalienable moral rights, and IP doesn't transfer by default. If you're hiring engineers or designers, your contract needs explicit IP assignment clauses written for that jurisdiction, or you may not own what your team builds. Third, severance. Firing isn't at will. Brazil funds a severance account plus a penalty on termination, and Mexico and Colombia have their own formulas. Plan for exit costs before you hire. Okay, here's a few practical notes. For contractors, platforms like Deal handle payments across 150 plus countries and 200 plus currencies, with contracts and tax forms all in one place. For lower fees, Wise and Payoneer are the go-to layers, and where you can, use local rails. PIX in Brazil and SPEI in Mexico are instant and basically free. One reality to plan for is dollarization. In Argentina, roughly 85% of contractors want US dollars or stablecoins, and that expectation is spreading. Decide your currency policy before you make an offer. And if you use a managed partner or an EOR, this whole section is handled for you. Okay, put it together. 1. Define the role. Outcomes, must-have skills, and the overlap you need. 2. Pick your country. Mexico or Colombia for a first hire, Argentina or Brazil for senior engineering depth. 3. Choose your model. Contractors for short independent work, your own entity only at scale, an EOR if you already have the person, and a managed partner like hire overseas when you want the sourcing and compliance handled together. 4. Get the contract right. Explicit IP assignment and a compliant classification. 5. Budget the full cost. Salary plus the employer burden plus the 13th month salary. 6. Onboard like they're a real teammate with a 30-day plan and a manager who checks in. Retention is where the savings actually land. The cheapest hire is the one you don't have to replace. Here's a quick trap list. Don't run a full-time employee as a contractor. Don't assume a US contract gives you the IP, and don't forget the 13th month salary, don't ignore the currency conversion, and don't treat a nearshore hire as disposable. Latin America is for most US companies the best value in global hiring right now. Senior talent in your time zone at half the cost or better. The region rewards doing it properly and punishes shortcuts. Contractors are exposed, entities are heavy, and an EOR really only solves half the problem. For most businesses building a long-term team, a managed staffing partner, the model Hire Overseas runs, is the top option, because it's the only one that finds the talent and handles the paperwork in one flat monthly fee. Match the model to the job, respect local rules, and you get the upside without the landmines. If this made hiring in Latin America clearer, subscribe, because that's what we do here every single week on The Latest in Business. Break down where work, money, and tech are actually heading before everyone else catches on. I'm out, and I'll see you in the next one.